Hey, I'm Kane from Source Estate and I'm here with Martin Adams Property. He works on BRRs and service accommodation, and we're going to be answering the most asked questions in property investing.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Martin, I hear you're really good with rent to rent. What is it?
It's probably the best strategy to get into property for beginners with little to no investment.
Right. So, if I was a beginner, I want to get into rent to rent, how much do I need to get into it?
It varies from, I would have thought the minimum is probably around £1,000 up to £5,000 for something slightly more complex.
All right. So, if I want to get into property, I've got £1,000, maybe even £2,000. How do I find a rent to rent property?
Simple, so easy. Just go online. You've got places like Open Rent. You've got places Zoopla, Rightmove, Spare Room. All these places are landlords and estate agents that are renting out properties, and you contact them and you're able to take them properties over, put them out on a short-term stay and earn a passive income from that.
So I'm a landlord and I've got a property, and why would I rent it out to you for you to make more money? And how, as a landlord, would I make more money?
Well, you hear all these horror stories now about how tenants do have quite a lot of rights due to non-paying and poor maintenance and sort of lack of care of the property. When you provide a property to someone that is in the serviced accommodation industry, they guarantee that they're going to pay the rent every single month. They furnish the property to a higher standard, they cover all the maintenance and stuff like that, and it's a much more safer investment for you as a landlord as to what it would be on a normal AST.
All right. So as a landlord, I'm not renting it out to a person. I'm renting it out to a company.
Correct.
What other benefits as me renting to a company would it have rather than doing a? So you say about ASTs, but what other benefits would it have to rent out to a company?
Well, obviously, depending on the contracts as a business and what your module is, for us, for example, we do guarantee that we pay the rent, and within a 14-day period, if we don't pay the rent, we have to vacate the property. We have public liability insurance, we have contents insurance, we provide all the gas and electricity certificates for the guests that stay. So we do sort of do a full package where the landlord hasn't got to do anything. It's real hands off for him, and we take on all that work.
Yeah. So, and if I'm a landlord and I want to rent this out to you, so that guarantees my rent, right? How long for?
As long as possible. From an investor's point of view, from my point of view, I want to control that property for as long as possible, because all the while that I'm in control, as long as you've done your due diligence, you're going to be making passive income from that. So we usually have a 3 to 5 year contract with a 1 year break clause, 6 months if the landlord is a bit skeptical and they're new to the rent to rent module. And then for 3 to 5 months, 3 to 5 years, sorry, we're just covering the bills. We're paying all of the council tax, we're paying all the utility bills, we're paying the rent on time, and then we're making a passive income on that as well.
So if I want to get into the service accommodation industry, I find a landlord who's up for it. How do I make money on top of paying his rent?
So that all comes down to due diligence. You might find a landlord that's got a really nice property that is happy to go ahead with the rent to rent module, but you might not make any money at all because it's in the wrong location. The desirability just isn't there, and sometimes you've got to allow into council tax, utilities, insurances, and OTA commission and stuff like that. So you have to make sure that you do due diligence to make sure that you earn money. But you can put the property out on these travel agents. You charge a nightly fee, and someone that's visiting the area, working in the area on a short-term basis, usually sort of 1 to 3 months, you might be charging £100 a night. So if you charge that out over a period of a month, that's roughly £3,000.
If the rent is,
If the rent's £1,000,
yeah,
obviously you have to take into consideration the commission. So that £3,000 is subject to 15%, usually, roughly. And then
commission on what?
commission on your booking. So if you make a
Right.
£3,000 booking, Airbnb or Booking.com will take around 15%. So it does work out to be quite a lot of money. It's about £450, I think, if my quick maths. So you're going to pay £450 in commission. You're probably going to pay around £140 to £150 in council tax. You've got your gas and your electric. You've got your insurances and stuff like that, and you've got your overheads as well. You need to furnish the property as well. That can be quite overlooked sometimes. Like with internet nowadays, you've got Facebook Marketplace, you've got Gumtree, you've got Boot Fairs, you've got a wide range of websites that you can have access to pick up either new furniture or used furniture that's in good condition that can dramatically cut your costs down. The main goal for the rent to service accommodation is to have as little money in the property as possible so you can recuperate that in profits in a short space of time.
How much money would I need to? So you 1 to 2 grand, is that plausible, or do you need more?
Again, all comes down to the property. If you're able to find a 1-bedroom flat in Maidstone, Kent, it's £1,000 per calendar month. It comes fully furnished. The bills aren't included, and you've negotiated with the landlord that you need a couple of weeks grace period to set the property up, get it clean and stuff like that, and then you're going to be paying your rent. So you've got 2 weeks to get that property in a showroom condition almost and get it advertised out for people to start staying. If you haven't got a furnished property, you're obviously going to be a lot more financially involved in that property. So you're going to have £1,000 a month rent. You've got £1,000 worth of probably furnishings when it comes to beds and sofas and stuff like that. So it can easily creep up. But like I said, the main goal is to be in the deal for as less money as possible. And sometimes we can negotiate a grace period where we don't pay rent for a certain period of time, or we do no deposit sometimes. So instead of paying £1,000 a month for rent and £1,000 deposit, we just pay the £1,000 a month of rent. So then that instantly saves us £1,000.
So I want to find rent to rents. What are some key ways to find them?
Multiple. All of them are online based usually. You can walk into estate agents. We found that a bit hit and miss sometimes because they have a hard time trying to convince the landlord that their property is in our best interest. But you've got Open Rent, you've got Spare Room, Rightmove, Zoopla. There are a real handful. And we also have these wonderful people called deal sellers and deal sourcers.
Hello.
This guy here.
I am a deal sourcer.
Exactly. So we would come to you, or you would approach us, and you would say, look, I found this amazing property. It's in Essex, for example. I've spoken to the landlord. We've negotiated this deal. I've worked out that it's going to be roughly this profit, and you need to invest this amount of money. Would you be interested? I would then look at the numbers, and if I was happy with the profits, you would then charge me a fee, usually around £3,000. Seems like a lot of money, but when you break it down, if you're making £1,000 a month, in a couple of months, it's worth its weight in gold, especially if you've got a 3 to 5 year contract. So anyone that's deal selling that wants to make a little bit of money, it's a good choice.
and what I will say when it comes to actually finding these properties, go ahead, try it. I mean, first of all, I'd recommend getting educated, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But when you try to find these kind of deals, it's a lot harder than you think. It's all well and good being able to say, oh, this is how it works. And then you try it, and like you say, you go into estate agents, and a lot of them laugh at you, and you get so many no's. It's a numbers game. It's a constant on the phone. You'll be making 40 calls a day, and you'll be getting nowhere. But it only takes one yes. So it is a numbers game, calling until you get it. That's why, if you don't have the time, if you've got money and no time, this is not a good strategy for you to try and get into on your own. You'll either want to JV with someone, or you want to buy the deal from someone and have someone else manage it potentially. There are deal sources that sell these kind of deals, but also they'll charge maybe a 15% commission fee to manage it. And obviously there's other commissions as well if it's SA, because you get different types of rent-to-rent deals, which we'll get into in a little bit. We're talking mostly about SA at the moment because you've got an SA, which we need to go check out at some point. But
Saturday I'm down there, so we can do something.
We will get that footage on Saturday.
Yeah.
We'll see an active service accommodation, see how it's running. We'll go through everything, how you've staged it, what you've done to it before and after photos, and give a bit of inspiration to anyone out there who's managed to secure themselves a rent-to-rent, but maybe they don't know what the next few steps are or what the quality is you need to get for it to rent out at. What are your occupancies?
it averages around 82 to 85%, which is nice.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really it gives a good profit margin. It also gives us enough time if we need to do any maintenance. We're not fully booked out every single month. I know obviously the higher occupancy the better because the more money you earn. But if you've got a guest in there for 3 months and something does go wrong, it is a little bit of an inconvenience because then you've got to intrude in their personal space while they're staying there and stuff like that. Sometimes we have it where a drain is a slow draining sink. And we wait, the guest will say, oh, just to let you know, the bathroom sink drains slowly. Once they check out, sometimes we have 1 or 2 days where we can get in there, fix that issue, and then when the next guest comes, it's like it never happened. So.
Yeah. On that point of problems in rent to rents, there has been in terms of like service accommodation, there has been a lot of pushback because you're taking on properties in sometimes residential areas, and because they're rented out as basically mini hotels, you'll potentially get parties and people that will do things for one night only. So how are ways to avoid that and even potentially like make it more accepted in those spaces?
Yeah, it's a good question, to be fair. So the easiest way to explain that is we have a channel manager. And basically a channel manager is like a little virtual online booking system. So we use Invivo. I know a lot of people love them. Some people hate them. That's what we use. And you'll give Invivo all of your property information, how many bedrooms it is, where it's located, what are the local amenities and stuff like that. And then they will advertise it across the sort of travel industry. So Vrbo, Google Stays, Airbnb, Booking.com. I think there's around 30 or 35 that Invivo advertise it as.
How much will that cost? That's a big question.
Yeah, per property, it starts off around £35 a month, and then the more properties you list, obviously, the more expensive it gets. But you're reaching a wide range of audience for almost no effort because they do all of the description. They do, obviously you have to put this information in, but they submit it into a website format where someone can go on booking.com and think, oh, that property looks nice. We'll stay there for 6 days. But how we reduce the party levels and stuff like that is we close our calendar off and we only target long-term bookings. So we are looking for the contractors and maybe the people that are staying for a long periods of time to see family or family events and stuff like that. So we'll have our calendar closed so no one can book it unless they're staying a minimum of 7 days. So that's a good way to avoid parties and stuff.
That's it. Yeah, I was going to say, I would say probably a 3-day minimum is ideal to avoid the party situation.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's working for you at 7 days minimum, that's fantastic. In fact, that could probably even be a great tip for most service accommodations because I always thought 3 days would be the best. But if it's 7 days, I mean, then you're only targeting longer stay bookings.
Correct.
So
again, it all depends on the location. Like sometimes there might be an area that does work really well with short-term stays where people are coming and going. If it's like a historical town or there's somewhere that's close to like the O2, for example, where they've just got a couple of events on, you have guests come and go really frequently. Obviously, the cleaners will be there frequently as well because after every clean, the cleaners come and clean it and stuff. But a long-term stay at the O2 might not be a good option because there is no reason for maybe someone to stay in that area for that amount of time. So you have to really work out where your property is located and how it's best going to perform. There's no point having a really well-performing short-term stay property to long-term stay contractors because it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So I'm a landlord and I want to rent my property to you. Sounds like a great idea. I love what you're saying, but to me, rent to rent, that sounds like subletting. Is it?
No, not legally. It's kind of like I wouldn't say it's a loophole, but it's a professional way to correct the system because subletting is when a private individual rents a property and then rents it to another private individual. We're not. We work as a limited company, so we are our own entity. We are our own business. So when we rent that property to someone else, we're not renting it as an individual. We're renting it as a business. So we're managing the property.
And the contracts matter a lot, right? Because
course,
the contracts are effectively the same as Holiday Inn and Premier Inn.
To a certain degree, yeah. The contracts are really good because as long as you cover yourself and you cover the landlord to give him confidence or her in confidence of what you're doing, it's basically just a mutual agreement. The contracts can be slightly edited, obviously as long as solicitors and stuff say it's okay, but that's why we say we're flexible on our contracts. So we can say, oh, we're going to be occupying the property for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years or 20 years. It all depends on what the landlord is happy for us to do. And like you say, we can include maintenance or we don't include maintenance, or we can include a break clause or we don't include a break clause. So they are very flexible, but a good contract will definitely give the landlord faith in what you're doing.
Yeah. And as I was saying earlier about the Premier Inn and the Holiday Inn, it's the same kind of contract in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm sure the Holiday Inn and Premier Inn build their own properties, but for a lot of them, they'll find a building that would work that's owned by someone else, and then they'll use contracts, the same ones we're using, to basically lease that building and have their logo over it and turn it into, refurb it into a hotel. But they're paying the building owner, the landowner, or anything like that, their fee, and they just take over as a business. It's exactly the same thing. It's just working at a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's we found when we do our due diligence, when we have guests book with us, we always do a little bit of homework on why they're staying, how we can cater to their stay to make it a bit more better for them and stuff like that. And we find a lot of people stay with us because it is for work purposes or travel purposes or whatever, and they don't want to spend 3 weeks in a room. Like just a hotel. I don't know if you've been to hotels these days, but they're just a room with a shower and a toilet. That's it.
Yeah.
So why go and rent that for £100 a night when you can come to a nice apartment or a flat or a house or whatever it may be? You've got access to cooking facilities. Sometimes you've got gardens. Sometimes they even have games rooms. You see some of the other luxury service accommodation providers. They've got cinema rooms and pool tables and swimming pools and stuff like that. Like,
it's ridiculous.
obviously, that's not going to be £100 a night, but you get what you pay for. But it gives you a lot of freedom compared to just a hotel room.
Yeah.
Right, so we've heard a lot about myself and my service accommodations and how we structure our business. But Kane is a deal sourcer, and we want to find out more about what you do to provide me with good deals.
Right. So yeah, I'm a property deal sourcer, and I find different deals and different strategies all across the UK. So anything from BRR, which we haven't spoken about yet, but I'll explain in another video, to rents, to buy to lets, to buy to HMO, buy to SA. SA is the abbreviation for service accommodation. If I say SA or we say FSA, that's what that means. But yeah, we'll do all of the hard work in finding deals for investors. So if you have a lot of money but not much time, then it makes so much sense to go with the deal sourcer. In fact, even if you have time and you're trying to find deals, it's really hard. You need to invest in the education, you need to have the experience, and then you need to know how to negotiate. In fact, if you're considering buying a property, any property, it's probably worth asking a deal sourcer to buy it for you or to negotiate for you, because ultimately their fee is usually 2% of the property price, and they'll be able to negotiate it down 10, 15%. So you'll save more money with a deal sourcer.
Another great thing about deal selling is it's a good way for a cash investor to scale up very quickly. So if you've got £50,000 liquid cash, you can go and buy a property and you can do a small refurbishment on it and rent it out as a standard buy to let, or you could go to a deal sourcer and you could buy 4 or 5 deals off of him as serviced accommodation properties, and you can generate a much quicker cash flow. So for an example, if you buy a house for £200,000 on a buy-to-let mortgage, you're going to need a 25% deposit. So that is your £50,000 gone. There's no money to do a refurb. There's no money for anything really. Where if you've got £50,000, we can go to a deal sourcer like yourself. You buy 3 deals, it's going to cost you £9,000. Each deal is going to earn probably £1,000 because you're going to provide us with the best deals you can. In 3 months, you're going to have your £9,000 back, and the rest of the 3 years is going to be pure profit. So,
And I would say that is probably the most you could say likely case, but I think it's probably you can make way more money going through a deal sourcer because they're going to do all the analysis for you, and it depends on your strategy. If you come to a deal sourcer, you say, I've got this much cash, how do I maximize it? And maybe you don't know that much about property. If you do, fantastic. You can invest in bespoke services, which is where you tell the deal sourcer exactly what you're looking for, and they'll be able to find that. But if you come to them like, I've got this cash, I want to invest in property, how do I do it? It's at that point the deal sourcer knows everything about property, or most things, especially creative strategies where they know how to maximize rent instead of just a simple buy to let, rent to rent strategies, or buy to SA or buy to HMO. There's like different strategies that they could offer, and they'll be able to educate you a little bit. So even if it's just a phone call, just for a bit of education on the matter, you'll be able to learn about new strategies that are coming out to make more money.
how can I trust in you as a deal sourcer that you've done your due diligence and your expected profit targets are achievable?
So we do massive due diligence. As a deal sourcer, the product we're selling is information. Ultimately, we're not selling the property. We'll know who the seller is of the property or the agent, we'll know the property, but we're just selling information for the property. So all of our worth is in our research. So you're paying for that effectively. We'll find a property that meets your needs. We'll then do all the market research in the area. We'll look if something works, something doesn't, and we'll look at comparables in the area. So we'll look at the demand, we'll look at supply, we'll look at what other houses sold for if you're buying a property. If you're looking at rents, we've got software that will tell us rents of other similar properties in the area, and like Airbnb and Booking.com, and we'll be able to basically calculate an average of what you're expected to return. And if they're a good deal sourcer, then most likely the figures they're going to give you they're not going to be realistic in terms. They're going to be all in your favor. So they might undersell the deal. So by the time you've bought the deal, they'll reveal the real figures, and then it's just happy days.
Yeah, so most people are probably sitting there thinking, oh, well, I've got a little bit of money. I could probably speak to yourself and try and buy a couple of these deals. What happens if we agree on an investment property and I pay you your finder's fee of 2%? If I'm buying a house that's £200,000, it's going to be £4,000. I send you £4,000 in good faith, knowing that you found me the investment property that I want. What happens if that falls through?
So there's actually a couple of things there. So the way my business works, and a lot of deal sources operate differently. However, what mine does is I take up the 2% fee up front. There's other ones that will do it on completion, and we'll take up the 2% up front, and then we'll have a 2-week cool down for you to check out the property yourself, send out your own surveyors, do your own due diligence, because ultimately we're selling information and you need to double check that information. So we give you 2 weeks to make sure it all works and it all looks good. After that 2 weeks, if you're happy with it, then brilliant, you got yourself a property. If after that 2 weeks you're not happy with it, it's in the contract. That's that's my money. However, if they're a decent deal sourcer, reputation is everything, and it very much depends on the problem. For example, in my situation, if after that 2-week period there is an issue with the agent or the seller or the property that couldn't have been found, because we check out the properties, but some things you don't know. You have to get surveyors in there and whatnot. But let's say you do your due diligence and there's something that gets found out after the fact. Well, if it's truly something wrong with the property, or the seller backs out, or the agent, again, in the contract, that shouldn't matter. However, me personally, if there's an issue on that side of things, I would offer a refund, no problem.
Yeah.
Because you want to keep, one, reputation is massive, and two, it's just like you're just selling a bad product.
You can always offer to find a like-for-like deal and replace that, and say, look, give us 8 weeks to find another deal, and we'll source something else.
Exactly. And once you've invested already, then it's easy if you just be like, oh, okay, this one fell through, and we want repeat service. So we want high satisfaction, I can't speak. We want high customer satisfaction with all of our clients, because at the end of the day, we're looking for clients that have money that want to invest with us, and ideally will keep using that money
It's
to
all
buy
about
more
cash
properties.
recycle, isn't
Yeah.
it? You sort of invest money to earn money to then reinvest that money into another property, and it's an infinite cycle that, end of the day, if you get it right, leaves you extremely wealthy.
Yeah, it's really important to find property deal sources that are compliant. There's so many sources out there that aren't compliant. They will do it as a freelance thing. They won't even set up as a sole trader because they're just thinking, all right, well, now I can make a decent amount of money. And all it is just going on Rightmove, finding a property, making a couple of calls. But here's the thing, if you don't do your due diligence on the sourcer and they're not compliant, then you got no redress. There's no way, if you have a problem with the deal sourcer or they sell you a property and something's wrong with the property, they might not refund you. And if they're not compliant, maybe they don't have a company or they're just not compliant themselves, then there's no way to get that money back. And sometimes if you're getting 2% of a property and they're selling a property for 600 grand, you know, like you're losing thousands to that. So you want to make sure they're compliant. And the main compliance you're looking for is they need to have a property ombudsman as a minimum. Insurance is preferable. It's not needed as a company, but preferable. ICO, if they're taking your details, because with the deal sourcer, when they ask for payment, they're also going to want effectively you're buying a house, right? So they're going to want your identification. So you've got proof of ID, proof of address, and proof of deposit. So they're taking really personal information from you. So they need to have ICO to make sure that, you know, when they take it on, they're doing it properly. They're doing it by the book. And
What about
finally,
anti-money laundering?
and anti-money laundering. Yeah, and that's
It's a big one
huge.
people forget.
Yeah.
There's a fine line between whether you need anti-money laundering or not.
Yeah.
And you can go on I think it's the Gov website, and it will tell you whether you need it or not once you've put in correct details.
Yeah.
But you know what the line is. It's if
Yes.
you're
They're-
selling, you explain.
Yeah, so anti-money laundering, it's a tricky one, and don't take me as a complete advisor here because I'm not educated in
Yeah, this is
advising.
not financial advice,
Yeah,
guys. We're not
making
accountants.
sure. Yeah, we need to make that very, very clear. I'll tell you what I know. So yeah, go on the Gov website, anti-money laundering, and see if it works for you. There are some courses that teach you how to do it without anti-money laundering. However, you're quite restricted in that avenue. In order to do that, your business has to be set up and it can only sell properties that are on market from agents or potentially an off market one that the agent hasn't put up yet. But you exclusively have to do it with an agency because it's business to business. And you change something called a SIC code, which is the type of business to the government. But if you're a deal seller and you go direct to a vendor, you find someone who's actually selling a property, then if you decide to sell the information like that, you're effectively an estate agent, which means you need to use a different SIC code, which makes you an estate agency, which means you need all this compliance. And this goes go back to compliance. There's a lot of deal sellers out there that don't have this compliance because they don't think they need it. And if they do it through just agencies, they can get away with a fair few things. But if they're doing it just through agencies, you're not getting some of the best deals, which are off market, which are ones you can really negotiate on because the agent, they want their fee as well. So what I would recommend is check out the deal sourcer, ask around, look at reviews, see if, you know, if they're worth investing in. Go on their website, check out if they have compliance. What I would say is I wouldn't go with them if they don't have at least a property ombudsman.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's quite easy just now to reach out to a deal sourcer like yourself, and there is really no, if you're an investor and you're interested in buying a property and using your services, a half an hour Zoom call, it doesn't cost anything. It gives you confidence in the person you're investing in, and 9 times out of 10, you know when someone is experienced in deal selling because you'll get it once you're talking on the Zoom call, or over the phone or WhatsApp video call, FaceTime. There's loads of different apps now, and you'll get confidence just by talking to them and making sure that they understand your needs and stuff like that. Obviously, you still have to do your due diligence because there's hooks and crooks everywhere, but you do get a sort of a sense of confidence just from speaking to the right person.
What's a really good thing with the property ombudsman is there's also a public list of people that have that on their website. So if at any point someone is part of one of the property ombudsmans, there's two government regulated ones that say you have to have one of these two. There is also a third. I don't know if it's government. However, it is a mediation service called PIMS. But of the two property ombudsmans, there's PRS and the property ombudsman. I'm signed up with both PIMS and PRS, Property Redress Scheme.
Yeah, so PIMS is just a property investors mediation service. So if you've got a problem with your investor or your deal sourcer or someone that you've put good faith into, if they're a member of the PIMS, you can contact PIMS and they act as a mediation service. So they will hear your problems, they will try and liaise with myself or Kane if we've provided a service that isn't true to them. And then obviously if it turns out that we are at fault and we sold a crooked deal or we didn't tell the truth in something, then the PIMS would blacklist us. And when you do your searches, obviously we'd come up as a negative feedback, which is not going to happen because we are good tradesmen and we offer brilliant services. So
Absolutely. But if you decide to hear the advice from your property ombudsman or your mediation service and you decide to go against it, right? There's of course the investor yourself can pursue legal action after that point. But most likely they're not going to, the person, the investor, whoever bought the deal and whatnot, they're going to win because it's already gone for a mediation service. And on top of that, if the person signed up to the mediation service doesn't comply with what they say, then they'll just get blackmarked and it'll be everywhere. They won't be able to work in property again because you can't have.
you don't want that.
You don't want that. Your name is now black, but on all of the property ombudsmans. No, we're never taking you again. You failed to listen to us, and now they're legally going after you. So yeah, make sure. I would say go with someone who at least has a property ombudsman, something like a mediation service of sorts.
Point.
BRRs as well.
We've got BRRs, which is the buy, refurbish, refinance. Isn't it?
Buy, refurbish, but you have BRR and you have BRR, which is
so
buy, refurb, refinance, rent.
Yeah.
Which is where you want
too many R's.
Yeah, where you want to do up a property. Usually you buy a property that's completely run down.
Yeah, you want the worst house on the best street.
Disgusting houses.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if any of you are aware, but if you buy a house that hasn't got a boiler, it's classed as inhabitable. If you buy a property that hasn't got a kitchen, it's classed as inhabitable. And usually a kitchen is just a sink. If the property doesn't have a sink, it's not classed as inhabitable. All these properties, they're not really viable for a mortgage, but also they're not viable for stamp duty as well. So if anyone has recently bought a property that doesn't have a working boiler or it doesn't have a kitchen and they've paid stamp duty, you can claim that back. So little tip for them guys.
That is money, that is.
Yeah.
Also, another abbreviation, JV, joint venture. Joint ventures can work in a variety of ways, but effectively includes multiple partners that are making a deal happen. I think the most simplest form is going to be you have an investor with money and you have someone with time who wants to do a project. The person finds the project, or maybe the person with money finds the project, but there's an idea, there's a vision for a project. The person with money doesn't want to manage, doesn't want to do anything. It can vary. You can do 50-50. However, typically, the person with the money just wants to throw money into a project that's going to happen. And the person with time is going to manage it and they'll go 50-50 on everything. But of course, that can be negotiated.
Yeah, it could be just you've got two people like ourselves. We might not have enough money to buy a house each, but we can go halves and we can buy a house together. It separates the costs, so it's more affordable for a larger audience rather than just one person fronting all the money. It can be someone that's got the money and someone that's got the time, but at the same point, not everyone might have the money. So it's a really good way to get on the property ladder, really. If you've got a small group of friends or a couple of friends that all put some money together, you buy a house, you do a little refurb between your friends, and then you either sell it and get like a nice little flip out of it, or you refinance it, pull the money out, and then go and buy another one. The exit strategies for JVs are really, really good. As long as you get the right deal and you find a good deal sourcer that's going to get you a good one, the deal sourcers have sort of probably, if you're not going to find the deal yourself and you are looking for a deal sourcer, they're probably the most important part of the puzzle because, like Kane said, they do all the due diligence for you. You don't really, you have to check, of course, but when a deal sourcer provides you with a deal and they always promise and over deliver. So
Not always, only good ones.
yeah, only the good ones. But you might have a deal sourcer that says, "Oh look, I found a house here. The purchase price is 100,000. It needs a 50,000 pound refurb, but when it's done, it's going to be worth 180." That sounds great. There's 30 grand worth of profit there. But it might be that by the time you've done the refurb, the market has appreciated in value in that area, and now it's worth 210. This is just like that last little bit of cream, and it means that when you refinance it, you're pulling out all of your money in the deal, and you've essentially got a free house with a low mortgage rate if you're interest only, or something like that, depending on the interest rates at the minute, because they're slowly but surely coming down. They was high, but they're coming down now. We're at about 5.25% now. I've seen some mortgages 4.9. So it is getting there. End of the month, it
Deal
doesn't.
sourcing is ridiculously lucrative, but it takes a long time to start up.
Yeah, it's
Like,
it's networking really. At the end of the day,
yeah, networking, finding people, being educated to be able to find deals and analyze them properly. But one of the hardest parts is finding investors. I mean, investors will be at networking events and training events and stuff like that. And investors aren't this special investor group. Investors are all around you. Your neighbors are investors. You know, most people, a lot of people own houses.
yeah.
So investors are everywhere. Money is everywhere. However, it's getting into contact with them. It's growing that list, and that's probably one of the hardest parts of it. Which is why I kind of want to I spend most of my time on marketing my business. It's a marketing sales business, effectively mine. I mean, yes, I sell the information in the deals, but what's really important that I do is I find the investors, because if I don't have anyone to sell to, then it's not business.
It's very communication and sales based. You have to sort of receive and portray information from your investor to an estate agent, and then of course you need to have a good sales pitch to haggle down the house to the lowest price possible to give your investor the biggest return on his investment. It is a lot more involved than some of the other strategies, but like you say, once you have got that foundation there, it is very scalable, and it is quite a lucrative way to make money. You hear about some successful deal sellers are 6 figures a month, £100,000.
Yeah, we know plenty of people that make 6 figures a month.
And it is incredible to see how a well-structured business that is in the deal selling industry, once you've got that there and you're receiving deals from estate agents, you're retaining that information and then portraying it over to investors, it is almost like a middleman service, but
everyone benefits.
Yeah.
And also investors, once they usually like your service, or maybe you don't deal with them, or if they're focused and they know exactly what they want, they'll invest in your bespoke service where they put a bit of money down but tell you exactly what they want. Then it just becomes, hey, I want this. Oh, deal gets sent through. Boom. Like, it is a job that if you get it right and you put loads of time and you build that investor list and you market it well, you get good at sales, so you can sell the deals, and you make really good connections with estate agents and they send you deals, you could effectively you could be anywhere in the world and make this thing work. I could be on a beach in the Bahamas and just be making calls. Oh, I've got this person wants this. Oh, the agent sent this. Boom. Make a call. It'll probably take 5-10 minutes, and you've got yourself 3, 6, 10 grand in your bank. In one phone call, which
obviously still need to pay tax on this, guys. Like, you're wrong. Like,
we should. We'll talk about the legal aspects and the tax. Tax is a fascinating subject. It's deep. It's not for everyone. It's an end game subject that I think we'll talk about when people get there.
Yeah.
But because you do not worry about tax.
Just remember
until you're
to
making
keep
money.
all your receipts, no matter where you are in life. If you start a business and you are trading off of that business, if you're buying a receipt that involves some form of relative to work, petrol, business cards, a shirt for when you walk into the estate agents, any van repairs or car repairs, it could be anything, a notepad just for when you're making notes for investors, when you're talking to investors. It sounds crazy, but even if you need to make a video call and you haven't got a smartphone or a laptop that's got a webcam or whatever these days, that is a tax deductible item because you're purchasing that to benefit your aid to work.
Do you want to know an amazing hack for tax as well along those lines? If you're making video content and you put something in a video, That's tax deductible.
So this
So-
house is
They're-
we're
they're-
going to do a walkthrough of this house in a minute in this video, and my purchase price is going to be tax deductible.
There are some items that aren't tax deductible. I think houses and cars aren't, but the majority of things are tax deductible. If I buy a phone and I put that in the video and I make it a talking
And if
point,
you're using the phone to video the content,
yeah, exactly. If you're
yes.
using it to video the content, that's easily tax deductible. But anything you put in the video, so next time we need a golden table,
yeah, yeah.
we need a golden throne, and we'll call that a set. And guess what? We just saved all that money. It is that is a fun little hack
So
to know.
as important it is to get a good deal seller and to get a good team of builders. It's just as important to get a good accountant, because they will save you more money, if not as much as what everyone else will in your team.
And on that, not just an accountant, you want to get specialized accountants, because accountant will know, maybe the majority of things, accountability. However, when you start getting deep, you'll want to get a stamp duty professional. Because accountants won't know everything about houses. Like maybe they are a house or like a housing accountant, but they might not know everything, all the ins and outs of stamp duty and all those extra taxes. Buy, refurb, refinance, rent.
Yeah.
Let's say you've got 100 grand and you put 15K. So you buy the property for 100 grand. You need 25% deposit, 75% loan. You'll put 15 grand into it, but it raises the property value to 150. After you've done all your work, you get a valuer out to check out the property. They raise the value up to 150. And now what you can do is remortgage at the new value, pulling all the money that you've invested for the property and the refurb. And in a lot of situations, or some situations, you can put all your money out and a little bit more, effectively getting all your money out as a loan, which is tax-free because it's debt, and then you can put it into another property. So it's an amazing way to recycle your money and build your portfolio, because you're left with a house with an interest only mortgage that you can rent out, that you've effectively bought for free, because you've managed to get all your money out and you can put that into another property and do the same thing over and over and over again.
It's like an infinite money glitch. It really is the best. Like, once you've found your little patch in the UK, it works pretty much everywhere. Depending, obviously, you come down into London, there's still deals to be had. They're just, instead of them being hundreds of thousands, they're millions, or very high hundreds of thousands. It's more probably for the experienced investors, but there's plenty of patches all around the UK where you can just recycle your money. And like you said, it's different for residential to buy-to-let mortgages, but depending on your situation, depends on your deposit. But you can essentially have a small sum of money. Well, it's £25,000 maybe. It's not a small sum to some people, but when it comes to buying houses, it is a relatively small amount.
Yeah.
You buy a house, you invest the £25,000, you spend the £15,000 or £20,000 refurbing it, and then, like Kane says, you pull all your money out, and then that money gets recycled into another house. So all you're doing is just moving your money from one property to the other, and after a couple of years, you've scaled up your portfolio to a large amount. Usually you rent out these properties on buy-to-lets. Like you say, you're in an interest-only mortgage, might be a couple of £100 a month. You might be renting out the property for £900 a month. You might only be earning £500, £500 on a profit. But if you've got 5 or 6 of them, it works out to be a real nice passive income. And then you get all the market appreciation of that as well. So just because you've refurbed a house in a year and you've earned money in the appreciation, you might be renting that out to tenants for 10 years. In 10 years, that 150 grand house might be worth 230,000. So what do? You refinance it again, pull out even more money. And then all that does is compound and compound. And before you know it, that little £25,000 investment that you had is now £250,000 liquid cash. And then you can start buying houses outright, which is then a completely different scalable business.
It's ridiculous. And that's definitely, I would say it's probably the best way to scale your business. It does take 6 months, to refinance the property. So it'll be like one property every 6 months.
Yeah, depending on your lender, usually it's 6 months to 2 years, depending on who you take your mortgage out with. But like Kane said, it is really probably the best method. But you have quick pound and you have fast, but you have quick pound and you have slow pound.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the BRRs are more of the slow pound.
I'd say it's more in-game stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of, or you could say it's maybe like 75% right. We'll just
Compound, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say in terms of property investing, yeah, you'd probably start with deal source. If you had nothing,
SAs.
you would start with. You can start with SAs, but SAs you might need a couple of grand to get started potentially. Sometimes you don't. But deal sourcing, I would say with deal sourcing, you need a little bit of money. You'll need to get the education. You'll need to get compliant and to set up the company, and that will probably cost you, you know, 5 grand, 4 grand. You could probably get a little bit less than that. There's a lot of courses that for like 300 or 500 pounds will teach you the information, and there's some better ones that are maybe, you know, 4 days long for 2,000 pounds that we went on. We've had experience in courses for that. We've actually on the same education, Samuel Leeds, and we're both part of the Samuel Leeds Academy.
Yeah.
There will be a link down.
Yeah, my affiliate link down below.
But no, we're part of the academy, and I think we both believe that Samuel's education is, well, it's good as you get, really. The value for money is fantastic. I think you'd be the best deal seller. You'd have most knowledge from his, because once you've done those 4 days,
it is intense.
It's intense.
It's really
like
intense.
12-hour days over 4 days, and if you do all 3, that's 12 days. They're usually each month, so it's not all in one go. But with 4 days at that intensity, it's so much information that I don't think that like two days on a course is going to be worth it. I would recommend Samuel Leeds, his courses, because they're fantastic.
This isn't a sponsored video, guys.
It's not, but I do have a link.
Yeah, we have an affiliate link, but that's just because obviously
we believe in it.
Yeah, we believe in it. It's a proven. Yeah. It's a proven success network. Like the environment that you're in, the education that you receive, it's more of a learn and execute. It's very hard to not become successful when you have a room literally full of hundreds of people, all in the same position as you usually. Some of them have got a bit more experience, some of them are complete rookies at all. They've just left school and they want to get into property. But when you've got people all ringing up on the phones and all securing viewings and selling deals to people, there's some people there that have never entered property before, and then after that day they've earned £3,000 because they've sold a deal to an investor, and it's incredible.
It's crazy to see, and it happens. Thank you so much for watching the videos. I hope you got some amazing, valuable information. If you're an investor and you're looking to invest into property, make sure you sign up to my free investors list on my website, source.estate. And if you're looking for more information on service accommodation or BRRs,
you can find me on Instagram, martinadams.property. Ask any questions, give us a follow, and then any of the questions we can put into next time's video. How can we find you?
I am on Instagram as source.estate.
There we go, guys. See you on the next one.